What's going on, everybody? It's Daniel Troutman again with the SmashCake.com and TroutmanPhotography.com. And today we're going to go ahead and talk about blurry backgrounds. Now, if you want to create more cinematic looking images and you want to make more money in the sales room doing it, blurry backgrounds are the way to start. So we're going to go through 3 easy tips that anyone can use to basically make their backgrounds blurry while retaining focus on their subject. And at the end of it, of course, I've got a bonus tip for you guys. It's a little something that I do personally that really knocks it out of the park. So stay to the end for that. And if you get value anywhere within this video, of course, that thumbs up button would be amazing. Now, having said that, we're done with all the housekeeping. Let's get into the first thing that I do when I want an in-focus subject and an out-of-focus background. So the very first way to get an in-focus subject and an out-of-focus background is the easiest one, and it's the one that most photographers turn to first. And that is, of course, to adjust the aperture on your lens, like I did here today. Now, I am shooting in a very, very small room, which is notoriously hard to get everything out of focus. So I chose an aperture of f2.8. And as you can see, of course, my face is in focus and all of that garbage in the background, of course, is slightly out of focus. Now, if I were to switch to an aperture like f8, f11, f16, of course, then everything in this room would be completely in focus. The easiest way to remember it is this: when you've got an aperture that is wide open like 2.8, then your background is going to be out of focus. And the more you close down your aperture, the more in focus your background becomes. So at f22, you're going to have a tack sharp subject and a tack sharp background. And when it comes to creating blurry backgrounds, of course, that's not what we want. But let's say in the scenario that you're photographing more than one person, you're photographing a group with multiple rows of people. If you were to choose an aperture like f2.8 in order to get a blurry background, now you've got the problem of course, blurring out the people in the second and third row. They're not going to be in focus. So what do you do in that scenario? Well, you can stop down your lens till f8, f11, f16. But again, the problem there, of course, is all of this back here would be very tack sharp. So what you need to do there is switch to step number 2. So the next step, of course, is distance. This is probably one of my favorite tools in the toolbox, is the distance from your subject to the background and the distance from your camera to your subject. Both of those will affect how blurry or not blurry your background is. So let's go ahead and take a look at the distance between your subject and the background. Now, if you're in that scenario again where we're photographing that group of 3 rows of people, you're going to go ahead and, if you want that background out of focus at apertures like f8, f11, or f16, then all you need to do is take that group of people and get them off the background. Just bring them away from the background. And the farther away from that background you're going to get, the more out of focus the background will be when you focus on the group of people. Now, the next way to go ahead and adjust the blurriness level of the background is to change the distance from your camera to your subject. Now, be careful with this one, because again, in that scenario where you're photographing a group of, 3 rows of people, when you bring your camera closer and closer to the subject, you run the risk of messing with the depth of field to the point where that third row might actually be out of focus. But if you're photographing only one person, this can be an incredibly powerful tool, because the closer you get that camera to that one single person, the blurrier the background gets. And if you combine that with a little bit of distance between your subject and the background, then you really get the creamy, blurry, beautiful backgrounds. All right, well, our third and final step before our bonus tip is all about zoom lenses. Now, when I'm in a predicament and maybe I can't exactly get my subject away from the background, the thing that I like to do is I reach for one of these. That is a 70-200, and I love it because as you zoom in with the 70-200, what happens is that it compresses the image and it exaggerates any blur that is already there. So when you shoot this guy at f4, there might not be as much blur as if there were if you were to shoot it at f1.4, but when you compress it, it exaggerates it. And what that means is that those of you who are on a budget, you don't need to buy an f2.8 70-200. You can buy the f4 and just zoom into 200 millimeters, and it's going to give you the same look as if you were to shoot that at f2.8 or even 1.8. So when I can't get away from a background, this is the guy that I reach for, or I reach for my 24-70. And then I zoom it all the way into its maximum focal length, and it exaggerates the blur that's already there. And that brings me to the final bonus tip, all right? Or tip number 4, if you will. And that bonus tip is simply this. I want you to take all of the steps that I just taught you just now, and I want you to combine them. If you watch the way that I photograph smash cake sessions, senior sessions, headshots, or anything on this channel, what you're going to find is that I tend to combine all of the things that I just taught you. I use them all at once, right? So if you've ever watched me build a smash cake set and wondered why in the world I'm using a 10x10 backdrop to photograph a baby, and that's because I'm going to take that baby and all the components of that set, I'm going to drag it away from the background a good 5, sometimes 6 feet. And by having a larger background, I, of course, can keep the baby from going off the edges. And then I take my trusty 70-200 or 24-70, and I zoom in on that baby, and it even blurs the background even more. And that's how I get that cinematic look in all of my images, by simply combining all of the steps that I taught you here today. Now, was that worth a thumbs up? Because I think it was, right? I think it was. And I want you guys to go ahead and get out, and I want you to grab your camera, and I want you to try it, okay? Just take an inanimate object, a can of coffee, put it on your dining room table, and try that trick where we work with the distance. Try changing your aperture. Try using a zoom lens. Now, if you don't have a zoom lens, don't let that be an excuse. Get on lensrentals.com, go ahead and get yourself a 70-200. It's $100. I think it's $107 for a week, and they mail it to your doorstep. So there are no excuses. And the more you practice what I just taught you here today, the better you're going to get at it, the more intuitive it will be, and the smoother your photo sessions will go. So if you're looking to get those blurry backgrounds, get out there and practice. And with those blurry backgrounds, you can expect a heck of a lot more money to come flooding in to your studio, and you can thank me later. Or if you really want to say thank you, all you have to do is watch one of these videos that's going to pop up next to my bald head here. And what that's going to do is it's going to tell YouTube that we're awesome, and it's going to push our content out to other photographers just like you that might actually need the help. So feel free to binge watch our stuff. And until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm Daniel Troutman with troutmanphotography.com and thesmashcake.com, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.